am Alexandria Hampton, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Miss Debbie Maples, the Vice President of Global Safety and Security with Salesforce. Hey, Miss Debbie.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited to have you today to continue our girl chat. This month we are celebrating Women History Month. And so this month we are so elated to have you a part of our IOBSE Women's in History Fireside Chat or Spotlight. And so we wanted to get a chance to connect with you and chat with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for including me in this girl chat. I love that. I love that I'm not ma'am chat. So I do work for Salesforce. I'm the vice president within the global safety and security team. I oversee insider investigations, security operations, protective services, travel safety. So I have a big chunk of responsibility as one of several leaders within the global safety and security team.
Nice. Awesome. And so I know we recently chatted with you recently, but we want to deep dive in remembrance of Women's History Month. We wanted to just deep dive and really get your take on empowering women in the security space as well as in the workspace. And so we have a list of questions that we wanted to ask you. So we'll jump right in.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So how do you empower yourself and the women around you?
That's a great question. I was thinking about the interpretation of empowerment, right? It's to allow, to give permission, to invite into conversations, into planning, into strategy, into problem solving. And I think for myself, I am empowered because I work for a leader who empowers me and, by the way, expects me to show up. And so I've had the benefit of working for my leader. I work for Keith White, who's the Chief Security Officer at Salesforce. I've had the benefit of working for him for many years. And so I think that I have a bit of a advantage in I know the expectation. I know when I need to ask for permission versus taking the right steps to be able to share back. Here's what I've done. Is there anything that you need more of or less of? And I think that in developing women and empowering women, just women aside, empowering leaders,
yes,
it's important to know what the expectation is, right? So as a leader, it's important for my people to know what I expect of them. Now, for women, oftentimes there is this reservation. McKinsey studies, Gallup polls, all these studies have been done where women may be looking for permission. And so when you are leading women and leading young leaders, it's important to make sure they know they are empowered, they are invited, they have the responsibility to come to the table with solutions, to be a problem solver, especially in the workplace. When we think about women as a whole, whether it's in life, whether it's in work, at play, being a mom, being a friend, those roles all have nuance in terms of what does empowerment look like. But I think to invite and to create an atmosphere where there is an expectation for that voice to be heard is super important.
Absolutely. Awesome. I really like how you broke down empowerment, because that's the first step, right? Is we have to empower women to be themselves and be great and be leaders. And so that leads me to my next question. With you having such a significant role at Salesforce as the VP, how do you actively communicate with women at your workplace to make them feel included?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've only been at Salesforce for 2 years, and it feels like that's just a blip in the big matrix of life, just a short period of time. But becoming involved as a champion for women was really important, that I signaled to the women on my team, to my organization, to be a part of our equality work, our inclusion work, and not just being a friend, but being an ally. So I like championing. I like making sure that if we have women who are young in their leadership, actively coaching, actively putting my arm around them in a way to say, you did great. And, if you ever want to talk more about how to get to the next level, let's have that conversation. I do that automatically with the women on my team. I think that, women conceptualize differently. They show up at times differently. And so it's important to remind them of how the world sees women in the workplace. And that is changing. That has changed so much over my career. And it is continuing to change, but there is bias. And it's important for us to recognize that there is bias towards women and minorities. And this isn't just, maybe there's bias. There is. Study after study after study has occurred where folks are honest about how they judge women and minorities. And so knowing that is very empowering, because if I know that I am going to be judged about how I show up, it's important for me to be aware of that and to lean into what those biases might be and to reverse them.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking on biases, I mean, I started my career in the security industry at a young age, and I was grateful to have you as my mentor, and still grateful to have you as my mentor. And so, speaking of those biases, what advice do you have for women who work in a male-dominated field? The security industry typically is more so of a male-dominated field. So, for someone who is in that field, what advice would you give someone?
Remember, you are equal. That was my first bit of advice. You are equal. There may be some areas of your strength, your skill set that are different, but you are equal. And so first, know that and be ready, be prepared. Do not back down. Have courage.
Yep.
I think that, we were created differently, Alex. I believe in creation. We were created differently. We show up differently in the world. And so think of those areas, and I don't want to create bias in how we are created differently, but think of those areas where there are differences in the way that men and women communicate, in the way that we lead, in the way that we develop, in the way that we nurture, and consider them strengths. And I think that, I think of the amount of conversation there is today about women and men leadership, and how there is still a terrific opportunity for women to have equal pay, for women to be promoted at the same rate as their male counterparts. All those things are really the work that needs to continue to happen, right? Absolutely. But know that what makes us different is also our strength. And so consider those things and show up. Be prepared. Hone your skills, hone your craft. What are you good at? And how are you mastering that? And what you're not good at, how do you make sure that it's not a stopper for you? It doesn't hurt you. You have to just kind of be aware that, have that EQ, that self-awareness and that self-management to be able to contribute in a way that's valued and coveted in some ways.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love that. So I wanted to dig just a little bit deeper and just, what have been some of your personal experiences that motivated you to think and care for women and give them empowerment? Have you experienced anything or any personal experiences that have really wanted you to empower other women?
Yeah, I think that, over the last 10 years, there's been so much conversation on equality and equity and being educated on that. Sheryl Sandberg's book years ago, it's probably 10 years old, Lean In, was a terrific, terrific tool to just draw and shine light on all the opportunities, right? Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, drew a lot of education and attention to the opportunity for equality. And I think that when I think about your question of like what happened, when I read that and when I became a part of a number of forums where this conversation was really active, I pursued that. Nobody told me, go be a part of women in leadership, go be a part of women in loss prevention, go and be a part of, the African American Network Group, go be a part of IOBSE, go be a part of OLA, which was the Hispanic Employee Resource Group. Nobody told me to do that. I knew that if I was going to make a difference as a leader and as a person for myself personally, that I would need to pursue understanding the opportunity as a leader, as a champion, as an ally, as a friend, but most importantly, for myself and for my daughter and for my friends and for the people that are on my team. It was important for me to understand the why. Why is this important? When I looked at the gap of how women were paid versus how men were paid, that was revolutionary for me. When I looked at the gap of how women were being promoted versus men were being promoted, and how women were applying for jobs that they were probably very qualified for, or not applying for jobs that they were very qualified for, where men were just like, yeah, I've got some of those skills, I'll do that. Yeah. I knew that I had to talk about it and that I had to make sure that I was identifying those women on my team and in my organization and in my larger enterprise and help them when I could see that there was potential, but there was reservation. I had a young woman who I actually inherited her. So I was given that team. She was on the team already. And there were two women. One was very strong, very in control, very mature in her leadership. Her voice was powerful. The other was also the one that I kind of noticed a little bit deeper, very, very strong, very good worker, but very timid, very quiet. And not personally, like she has a lot to say and she's, has a lot to contribute, but she would defer to her colleague to be the voice for them. Stop it. Speak up. Let people know you are listening and you are there and you hear and that you have an opinion. And that would be, that was something that I did for this young woman. And she said, you know what? I've worked for this company for 13 years and nobody has ever told me or given me that advice. And you know what? She's since been promoted. She is a powerful leader. She doesn't ever pass up the opportunity to speak up and speak out. And I know I had a little bit to do with that. And that's just kind of just a recent, I would say, just something to celebrate, because I know I made a difference in that young woman's life. And whenever I hear, my daughter is a musician. She has a backup singer who's going to Harvard. This girl is brilliant. She has a powerful voice. And they were doing a show and they had some music going on. And she said, oh, I wish I could sing like that. And I turned to her and I was like, you do sing like that. And you even sing better than that. And I think as women, Alex, we have to remind each other of our gifts and of our strengths. And because if we don't, who is going to?
Absolutely.
Who is going to do that? Yep. So, I think it's important to have those voices in our lives, but it's also important to be that voice for others.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I've been so grateful and so blessed to have you as a mentor, specifically a strong woman in the security industry. But just because of your leadership, I've been so successful, obviously, in my own personal endeavors and professional endeavors. And so I am greatly, greatly appreciative of that. And so that leads me into what makes you such a strong woman. I mean, like I mentioned, you've been a mentor of mine for years now. And so, I mean, you're strong, and you have led so many other women like yourself. But what makes you so strong? What fills you or what fulfills you?
I think, there's a number of things that create strength in our lives, right? Balance for sure is very important, and knowing what your priorities are. And I think if you see me as strong, I receive that. I think that's like beautiful. I've heard that lots of people, you're so strong. And when you're like, I'm just regular. I don't know that I'm that strong, but I realize that I have a gift. I have a
Absolutely.
gift that, I am inherently bold. It is my personality to be direct and to be bold and to be courageous. And that could also be a weakness, right?
Absolutely.
So, in terms of what makes me strong, I know who I am. I know what my priorities are. I know what's most important to me. I know what is expected of me. And I also know, Alex, that when I don't know, it's okay to say, I do not understand. And I think that when people, when leaders are afraid to say, I don't get it, or I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, we become weak because
Mhm.
of our pride. We're not willing to say, hang on, I want to be clear. I want to make sure I'm meeting your expectations. What is it that we're solving for? I have a colleague who says that all the time. What are we solving for? Making sure that we're vulnerable and that we have a voice and that you know who you are. And if you have a skill, hone that skill. If that's your passion, hone it. Make sure your craft is, polished, and that you become the master of that area of expertise. That way, you come to the table with credibility, you come to the table with trust, and you come to the table with some results in your hip pocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this will lead us to our last question. How can we expand women's links to each other, whether it be mentorship, coaching, networking? How can we expand that so that other women feel included as well or empowered?
I think you have to continue to show up and be present. You have to get involved. This does not happen in a knitting group. I mean, no offense about knitting groups, because I learned how to knit when I was 9 by my grandma, but that's not what's going to create change. It's going to be getting involved in conversations that make a difference, getting involved in groups that are going to make a difference. IOBSE, the International Organization for Black Security Executives, when I got involved in this, like 12, maybe even, I don't know how many years ago, it's been a long time. I got involved as an ally. I
Mm,
wanted to make a difference in the business community as a female and as a minority, and to strengthen the Black community of leaders, to be a
mhm.
part of that, to be a part of that journey. I was inspired by it. And, I knew that it would make a difference for my children, for my son, for my daughter, for my nephews, for my nieces. And so I just think you have to find a way to be a champion for a cause that you believe in. And equality is a cause that I believe in. And equity is a value that is very important to me. And understanding that being different is a good thing, it's a strength, but being equal is something that we have to remind folks that we are, despite our differences.
Absolutely. Well, Miss Debbie, we truly, truly appreciate you just taking the time out to speak with us. on behalf of the International Organization of Black Security Executives, we want to just say thank you. And we wanted to sincerely say thank you, not only for being a part of our community in the security space, but as well as being a strong leader within IOBSE that other women can look up to and feel empowered. So we do appreciate it. I know I took a lot of nuggets away from this chat with you today. And again, we truly, truly appreciate it. So in the meantime, anyone else out there who is watching, please feel free to comment, like, share, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn so that you can continue to get more of these great chats. We appreciate it and thank you again.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.